All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. One of my favorite articles of the year is when Matt Barrows sits down with Scot Mccloughan, former Niner general manager. Mccloughan is unfiltered and will give you exactly how he feels about the Niner draft, and we'll talk about that coming up next. But we are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And they do run out. So get to Pig in a Pickle. Tell them that Krug sent you. Get the brisket chili. The potato chips cooked in beef fat, which you can only get in Corte Madera, are amazing. Go check out Pig in a Pickle. Say hi to Damon and Mary and tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. All right, let's talk a little bit about one of my favorite articles every year. And it's when Matt Barrows sits down for The Athletic with Scot Mccloughan, former Niner general manager. And he'll go through, his thoughts on who he likes and doesn't like in the draft. And, this is a guy, Mccloughan is now 53 years old. He ran the Niners scouting department from 2005 to 2009. And now he does like draft consulting work for agents and a few teams. He worked for the Lions for a while. I think Washington, a couple teams, as a draft evaluator. Why? Because he's so good. He's such a great draft evaluator. And he's just a great personnel evaluator. He's always had the ability to do it. He kind of sees through the minutia and gets to the essence of a player. And he doesn't look at every player. So unfortunately, we can't get a full rundown in this article about every single player in the draft because he didn't do evaluations on like Malik Mustafa from Wake Forest, the Niners' 4th round pick. He didn't do an evaluation on Jarrett Kingston from USC or Tatum Bethune from Florida State. And the only undrafted player he watched was the Missouri running back Cody Schrader. So it's not like he's giving you the full breakdown of the entire draft because he didn't see all these players, and he's not going to, even though I'm sure he has opinions and could formulate them quickly, he's not going to give you a bunch of false opinions unless he really did the deep dive. The guy that he likes the most is the guy that I've been saying I like the most, which is the Arizona wide receiver, Jacob Cowing, who the Niners took with the final pick of the 4th round. And Mccloughan told Matt Barrows, he said, damn good football player. Damn good football player, he said. He's quick, fast, he's instinctive, he's competitive. He scored a lot of touchdowns too, and he can get down the field and go. He's cool. He's really, really cool. So, Cowing caught at least 69 passes in each of the last 3 seasons and scored 18 touchdowns in 2023. So Cowing is absolutely been an incredibly productive player. One other stat that I thought was interesting. He is top 10 all time in both receptions and receiving yards for Division I players. So Jacob Cowing has been very, very productive at UTEP, and then he took that same production. He went to Arizona. He didn't lose a step. So he's been very, very productive. And he fell to the 4th round of the draft because he's small. He's 5'8" and 3/8. He's 168 pounds. He was the shortest receiver taken in this year's draft. He was the lightest receiver taken in this year's draft. But he's just a big-time guy. And Mccloughan says that he reminds him of Bobby Ingram, who played at Penn State and then played with the Seahawks in the early 2000s when Mccloughan was part of Seattle's front office. Ingram was 5'9", and he wound up playing in the NFL for 14 seasons. And when Mccloughan does a comp, you really got to take it to heart. When he was talking about Cowing, he says he'll tear up rookie minicamp, 7-on-7, all that stuff. He says you'll be like, wow, you wait and see. He'll blow your mind. He's fast and quick. He's a little bolt of lightning gone. That's exactly what I see. I see a guy who, even though he's small, he's not weak. He's quick, he's fast, he runs great routes, he plucks the ball with his hands, he plays with confidence. He's been enormously productive. He's a small-bodied guy, but I don't think he thinks of himself as a small-bodied guy. So, that to me was really interesting. Now, the other interesting thing is that, Maddie says that Mccloughan was not necessarily as excited about Ricky Pearsall, who was the team's first-round draft choice, who they took at number 31. And Mccloughan said exactly what I said, which is that he liked other receivers better, including Georgia's Ladd McConkey, who went to the Chargers 3 spots later in that second round. I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I liked Pearsall, but I kind of like Ladd McConkey better because he ran in the 4.3s and he did it in the SEC. I kind of like Xavier Legette better because of his upside and just the size and the speed. I mean, 230 pounds, and he's running in the 4.3s. So I kind of like those guys a little better. But interestingly enough, a lot of people like Mel Kiper said that Renardo Green was a big reach, like a 2-round reach. And I thought of Renardo Green as kind of like a 3rd-round pick, maybe a high 3rd-round pick. To me, his film was really good. Mccloughan said he had a 2nd-round grade on Renardo Green, who the Niners took with the last pick of the 2nd round. He thinks Renardo Green can play either outside or inside at the nickel cornerback spot. And here's the quote. He says, "You have to be able to play strong to be in the slot because you have to be able to play the run." And he was good against the run, and he was he was a competitive, tough son of a gun. I liked him quite a bit. And that's kind of what I see with Green as well. I mean, this guy is serious about football. He's a hitter, and McCloughan's absolutely right. I mean, if you're going to play the slot position, you're basically between the tackles, and you got to be a run defender. One of the things that was the biggest surprise to me last year was how good Demo Lenore was defending the run. He was really, really good defending the run, and he was incredibly physical against the run. So he thinks now Demo could stay inside and Green could play outside, or Green could play outside or play inside, and Demo could switch to the outside. So that's something to watch for in camp. He also commented on the 49ers' 3rd-round draft choice, Kansas's offensive guard / tackle, Dominic Pooney. That was the Niners pick in the 3rd round. He gave Pooney also a 3rd-round grade. He says he envisions him playing guard, but maybe even left tackle in the NFL. He said Pooney has really quick feet. He's got good athleticism, which makes him a good fit for the zone blocking scheme that the Niners employ. The quote was, "I think he'll end up being a guard. He's really good with his hips and feet, really good, but I'm not so sure he can't be a left tackle when it's all said and done if he gets stronger." So, it's funny. Pooney's played all 5 spots on the line. But the opening for the Niners right now is at right guard. It might be at left guard down the road if Aaron Banks leaves in free agency. I kind of see him as a guard as well, but I think it's interesting that he thinks maybe Pooney's got the upside if he gets bigger and stronger to play left tackle. You can see the movement ability is really there, but to me, I don't know if the footwork is ever going to be good enough to be a left tackle. To me, he looks like an overpowering guard. Like a guard with excellent athleticism. And then, the final draft pick that Mccloughan looked at was Isaac Guerendo. And, excuse me, I may sneeze here. The Louisville running back, who obviously, the Niners loved because they traded 2 5th-round picks to get an extra pick in the 4th round, and they took Guerendo. There was also reports from Tony Pauline going into the draft that the Niners were hot to trot on Guerendo and may even take him as early as the 3rd round. Obviously, that was probably a correct report because they probably considered him in the late 3rd round, but went with Pooney instead, and then got an extra 4th-round pick by dealing their 2 5ths and took Guerendo in the 4th round. Guerendo averaged 6.1 yards per carry and scored 11 touchdowns for Louisville last season. And Mccloughan was quoted to Barrows as saying he had a good year, but he's nothing special. unless he can return kicks and play special teams, I'd be surprised if he makes the team. Now, I do understand where he's coming from here, from the standpoint of he doesn't have, this is a very interesting prospect. Isaac Guerendo had a monster last game in the bowl game against USC, 160 yards, easily his best game, a couple touchdowns. But he's never been the bell cow back on his team. He doesn't have that kind of, he's big, strong, fast, but he doesn't really have that pick and slide that you typically see from a running back. He doesn't have that ability to kind of weave in and out, stop and start. He just doesn't seem like he's that kind of a player. Is he fast? Yeah. I mean, he ran 4.33 at 220 pounds. So that shows he's got NFL athleticism for sure. But I totally agree with Mccloughan on this one. Not that he's nothing special. I think his athleticism is special. But what he means is he's nothing special as a running back. He's not one of these guys that makes you miss. He's not one of these guys that has pick and slide between the tackles that can kind of weave through holes and, kind of carve out his run lane. He's like a one cut and go power guy who, if he can get to that second level, will then show you his ability to run away with the big time speed. But Mccloughan says, unless he returns kicks and plays special teams, I'd be surprised if he makes the team. I see him as a guy who could be an enormously dynamic fullback. He played wide receiver. He was Mr. Football in the state of Indiana coming out of high school at wide receiver. He played wide receiver. So he can catch the ball. And he can block. I've seen him step up and stonewall defensive ends. He's definitely got the size and the strength to do that. So he can block and he can catch, but he's kind of linear. I mean, he's kind of a straight line runner. And I don't see him necessarily as a running back. But if you told me that he was going to be a jack of all trades, special teamer, receiver, I think in a lot of ways he is the perfect complement or replacement part for Kyle Juszczyk. And I thought that months ago when I was looking at Guerendo. When I first, started taking a look at this guy, I thought, well, you know what? He's not really a running back from the standpoint is he kind of runs upright, doesn't run with a tremendous body lean, doesn't have a lot of running back skills. But he definitely is big and strong and fast, and he definitely can catch the ball, and he definitely can block. So it's interesting. I think if you took Guerendo and played him at fullback, I mean, Kyle Juszczyk, fullbacks in the NFL are no longer 250 pounds. They're more like 235, 240. I would say most of what Juszczyk does is not power based on his frame. It's more about his smarts. It's more about his athleticism. They throw it to him from time to time. They use him as the wildcat quarterback. He's not your pure short yardage fullback who takes it up in there and just is like, oh, you are not stopping this. Like everybody in the world, you line up in the eye and everybody in the world knows you're going to go fullback dive on short yardage and you still get it because your guy's that big and that powerful. He's not that kind of a fullback. He's more of a jack of all trades, great athlete, smart player, does a lot of different things, blocks, catches, lead blocker from time to time. But I mean, he is like a jack of all trades guy. And I kind of think last year they went for Jack Coletto. Why? Because he was incredibly smart. He didn't really have NFL athleticism, but he was a fullback, fullback, a quarterback. He was kind of like the jack of all trades, special team guy. They wind up cutting him when they needed a roster spot, and he's now on Pittsburgh's practice squad, and he'll go to camp with them this summer. In a lot of ways, Guerendo is kind of what Coletto wasn't. Coletto was enormously smart and had experience playing fullback and, mentally was exactly what you want. Guerendo's more physically exactly what you want. And I don't know what he is mentally as a fullback. I don't know that I've ever seen him play fullback. But just think about it. If you do have Jacob Cowing, who's a lightning quick guy who gives you another big play guy, And let's say Pearsall's dangerous security blanket in the middle of the field, and you still have Ayuk, and you still have Debo, and you've got Kittle, and you've got CMC, and you've got cap problems. You know what? Maybe this would be the perfect replacement for Juice, who's a big cap number for them, or at least has been in the past. I know he's redone his deal recently. But I think Guerendo would be a nightmare to have to defend if you could flip it to him in the flat. And he's got one defender to beat, and he's got 4.3 speed, and he's 220 pounds. He could run that guy over or run by that guy and have a huge play. And when you have a fullback that has 4.33 speed, I mean, I think you're adding a level of speed and complexity to your offense. I mean, good luck covering that. You got to cover Kittle and CMC and a 4.3 fullback and Debo and Ayuk and occasionally JJ and maybe Jacob Cowing. And now you're going to mix in a fullback who runs like this. So I know people laughed when I said Guerendo is a fullback, but I kind of agree with Mccloughan. As a running back, this guy's not better than McCaffrey, and he doesn't have the ability, the natural running back instincts that Elijah Mitchell has. And I'm not even sure that he has the exact kind of instincts that JP Mason has, who kind of runs upright and is a little raw, but I think he's even a better running back. But this guy's got better speed than all of those guys. And maybe the fullback spot is the spot for Guerendo. So I'm just saying, he didn't comment on that, but to me, that makes a lot of sense. And then the last comment that Mccloughan had is he didn't have a high grade on Cody Schrader, the undrafted rookie from Missouri. And he thinks Guerendo is better. But then the quote from Mccloughan was comparing Guerendo and Schrader. He says, but it's close, very close. And he says, Cody will out-compete him. I promise you that. So that is kind of a statement about Cody Schrader and what he is as a competitor. I thought I saw two running backs this year that were, better than their skills. And that was Blake Corum and Cody Schrader. In that they both are kind of leaders. They get every yard that's important. They're really tough to handle in short yardage. You can just kind of feel their will and their competitive fire on the football field. Cody Schrader doesn't really have NFL size or speed. He's small and kind of slow. He's got a 4.6 140, and he's 5'8", 215 pounds or whatever, 210 pounds. But when you watch him, you're like, oh, this guy's good. And there's no question he got it done in the SEC against top flight competition. And it wasn't like he piled it up all against, Vandy or something. It was like he went off against the best teams. He went for 5 yards a carry against Georgia. It's the best defense in the country. So he had almost 9 yards a carry against Tennessee. He went for over 200 yards against Tennessee, against Arkansas. He ran big against the Buckeyes. Cody Schrader's real. And that's interesting that Mccloughan says that Schrader and Guerendo are close, and that Cody will outcompete him. So I'm looking forward to seeing all the Niner rookies this summer. But after reading this article with Mccloughan, with Matt Barrows in The Athletic, really eager to see Cody Schrader and Guerendo, really eager to see if Guerendo can find a place on the team. And if I'm right that he might be kind of a fullback, eager to see Dominic Pooney, and super eager to see Jacob Cowing. And that was the big takeaway, is that, I've been talking about this for a couple of days now. I think Cowing could be really, really electric. And imagine if the Niners, who already had a really good offense, could add a dynamic, blur of a player. I call him a blur because he's that fast. And he plays fast, in Jacob Cowing. And Cowing could be a big contributor for them, out of the chute, right away. And just, that could give them a level of a dynamic level that, another dynamic weapon to add to the mix. So, and if he's Bobby Ingram, as Mccloughan compares him to, that would be incredible. If the guy plays 14, 15 years in the NFL, that would be amazing. But I love the kid as well. And when you watched him at UTEP and then you watched him at Arizona, you can see. I mean, he's a tiny little guy, but don't tell him, because he's playing at a high level. And then I thought it was interesting that Mccloughan was so honest about Pearsall. Hey, he's not one of my favorites. He wasn't my favorite receiver in the draft. I thought that was really interesting. The fact that I agree with Mccloughan. I think McConkey, was a little bit more dynamic because he's faster. He's small. They're both kind of, I think, going to be, durability concerns about both Pearsall and Lad McConkey. But he says he loves McConkey. I loved Xavier Legette. They both went after Pearsall, so I thought that was good honesty from Scot Mccloughan. So great piece. I would encourage. Matt Barrows does great work at The Athletic for sure, but nothing is better than his post-draft sit down. Just to put this in perspective, a couple of years ago, or last year, he really liked Jalen Graham. Graham was a bust-out star in camp. Didn't do much in the regular season, but look for him this summer. A couple of years ago, he really liked Talanoa Hufanga and said he was a special player. And now he says he likes Jacob Cowing. So makes me like Jacob Cowing all the more. I thought it was, super outspoken to say that Guerendo may not make the football team, but I see what he's saying. He may not make it at running back. He may get outperformed in the preseason by Cody Schrader. The question is, I think he can be a dominating, dynamic, maybe the most dangerous fullback in the league today. A 4-3 fullback. I mean, so think about it for a second. If I'm right, and Mccloughan's right, and Jacob Cowing is really special, then you added a special 4-3 receiver in the fourth round. And if I'm right about Guerendo being a fullback, then you've added a 4-3, 220-pound fullback. You've added two truly dynamic weapons to an offense that's already very, very dynamic. So interesting breakdown for sure. Go read Matt Barrows in The Athletic. And Scot Mccloughan loves Jacob Cowing. All right, this video is brought to you by our sponsor, Aura. And now a word from our sponsor, Aura. Have you ever typed your name on the internet and seen all of your private information is online? Are you tired of receiving tons of spam calls from random numbers? Are you receiving more and more of these as time has gone on? Well, that's where Aura, the sponsor of today's show, can really help you out. Data brokers sell your information to scammers and spammers and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, your email, your home address, all your records, your health records, who your relatives are. It's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use the information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, or any other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats I can't see. I get other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. It's really easy to set up. And best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to the link in the description to start your 2-week free trial. And thanks to Aura for being a proud sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.